Hi everyone, today let's talk about the world's most important stock, then we'll get into all the usual data and charts. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So NVIDIA has become the most important stock in the world and they are announcing earnings tomorrow. The stock has been growing massively and the company is also growing massively, so triple-digit growth is expected for the fourth straight quarter and they really need to deliver the standards. The bar is set very high, but so far they have delivered on each and every one of these and the stock continues to rally on these earnings announcements. The last one was a little bit muted, but generally they do well and they've been benefiting from AI. Of course, the boom in AI, and basically every tech company that you can think of has been buying NVIDIA chips to try to keep up in this AI race. And we've already gotten the earnings for everyone else. All of the mega cap tech companies said that they are buying NVIDIA GPU units to run these massive AI large language models. But it is worth noting that their growth is expected to slow to a meager 75% for that October quarter. So we're looking to see what the guidance is. After that point, are they going to raise this guidance and continue to grow at the current rate? Or are they going to hold this guidance and we're going to start to see NVIDIA slow down a little bit? Obviously, they will slow down at some point, but the question is when. And also, you do want to consider the stock has rallied pretty significantly into the earnings report. And if they don't deliver on that earnings report, they could certainly give all of that back in a hurry. So something to consider. NVIDIA is super important and typically they do well and they absolutely need to. Moving over to fear and greed, we were flat today, 53 today, 53 yesterday, nothing moving here. Markets have been hovering for a couple of days, strength still sitting in fear. Breadth continues to rally here, which is interesting. Extreme greed there now for that indicator. Put call ratio continuing to rally up here, so to me that means this is probably going to continue and we're going to see that market downturn. VIX holding right in this 15-16 area. Did pull back slightly here today, but nothing crazy. Safe haven demand back into neutral, and junk bonds still sitting in extreme fear and has not moved for a while. Markets are still buying up all of those bonds to try to lock in gains before we see that market cut. Moving over to seasonality, today we were expecting a slightly bullish push. You can see it here on the election year calendar, and sure enough, we got it. Tomorrow is also supposed to be a pretty significant bullish push, so we'll see if that follows through. And then it's going to flatten out here, maybe slightly bullish for the Russell as well as the NASDAQ into the end of the month, while we see the Dow and the S&Ps remain mostly flat into the end of the month. Moving over to earnings calendar, there are a few companies left here. So you got NVIDIA, huge market cap, obviously. Salesforce coming out tomorrow as well. CrowdStrike, that'll be interesting after the debacle that they had. And then looking at Thursday, you still got Marvel out there, Autodesk, Lulu, Dollar General, Brown-Forman, Ulta Beauty, Campbell's Soup, and that'll pretty much wrap up the week and this overall earnings season. So just those last couple of outliers, which comes a little bit after that break that we see from mega cap tech to these last earnings announcements. Moving over to the economic calendar for Tuesday, you can see we did get consumer confidence, which was much better than expected. Previous number was also revised up pretty well. 2-year note auction came in at 3.87, well below the 4.4 from the previous. And then for tomorrow, basically nothing. 5-year note auction. And then for Thursday, remember this one's pretty substantial. We have GDP coming in, initial jobless claims, which continue to be interesting. And then to wrap it up for the week, you do have that PCE data. It's still all the way down at 545, current stock price 560. So we are still sitting all the way up there. Basically didn't move at all today. Put call ratio did come down a little bit to 2.11. Total options came down as well to 1.2 million. Put wall is still down here at 545 and 550. Call wall still there at 557. So still expecting a little bit of bearishness, at least into that range. 550 is really that price target based on this chart. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&Ps, you can see we are right at that resistance here, still getting this kind of consolidation topping pattern in my opinion. Momentum continues to roll here, RSI continues to stay flat, while that SMA continues to trend up. So no change in the thesis. We did touch that 9 EMA just for a moment. That was at 55.96 and the low of day was 55.93. So we just got through that level, touched it just barely and then bounced slightly. So initial test complete. We'll see if the next test rolls right through there. And then if it does, you can see the trend line sitting in that 55.12 area. And zooming in here, you can see next zone of support after that would be that 55 EMA all the way down at 54.86, which gives you a ton of room here on the daily chart. And then then looking at levels here on the hourly and the daily, you can see we are right in between these two levels here, 560.07 up to 565. That 565 is your all-time high. We can't seem to touch that, continuing to see resistance in that area. Did dip to a slightly lower low on that pre-market candle right before the open versus the price action that we saw yesterday. You can also see we're still waiting on that 144 EMA to consolidate 1 or 2 more days, and we're going to get that consolidation up here right in that current price, and then we should start to see that roll to the downside. I'm still expecting this consolidation to lose momentum and roll to the downside, so we'll see how it plays out. That's what I'm looking for, and it still seems to be the thesis in my opinion. Moving over to the Tasty chart here on the 4-hour, you can see ATR resistance has not moved. That's still sitting at 565.49, which is again right in that all-time high range. You can see we took out that bullish condition back here on the 11 o'clock candle on the 22nd, and since then we've been in this sideways consolidation. We are starting to see those ATR bands consolidate as well. They're starting to move in a little bit, and again looking at it on the hourly chart, you can see we're testing those support areas, not getting up to test those resistances, and I still think this is going to roll to the downside. It is worth noting that 89 EMA held in there at 559.73, and basically we're in the middle of the range, still in bearish conditions. Hourly stop would be that 563.54 area. Moving over to the NASDAQ, very different thesis here. You can see we did make a new lower low. I thought for a second here this was just going to start to crater and fill this gap back here, all the way down towards that 19,000 area and that 21 EMA at 19,021. But then we ended up catching a little bit of a bounce, ended up holding that trend line in the 55 EMA. So this continues to look awful. Still looks like it's going to continue to sell in my opinion, despite the little bit of support that we ended up finding at those lower prices. So we'll see how it plays. We did test this high back here from the 31 July and 1 August candles. Again, initial test, found a little bit of room. We're still below that 9 EMA, which is at 19,624. And I still think this is going to roll back down to that 21 EMA. And then if it finds support there, that could absolutely establish a higher low, and then we'll see what happens from there. But in the short term, meaning the next couple of days here, I think we're probably going to test that 21 EMA, which from current price gives you about a 2.75% down move. And then taking a closer look at the intraday price action here, you can see we fell immediately on the open, touched that support level at 471.93, wicked it, and then 3 candles later we were already back at that 477.69 level, rejected, held the 21 EMA here, caught a little bit of a rally into resistance again, and then rejected from there. So this resistance continues to hold, makes sense. We got here, tested this one, couldn't quite make it, broke down, broke here, held a low here before breaking down and testing that support, and then rallied right back to it. So looking to see what happens. Most likely we'll probably get a light test of that tomorrow and see a break. 21 EMA is still hovering in there at 475.96, and then comparing that here to the daily chart, you can see we are still in this rolling down pattern, still watching this trend line. 55 EMA also sitting there at 474.42. Again, want to see both of those areas break, looking for that 21 EMA as that next price target in the 462.97 area, or about 3% lower from current price. Moving over to the Mag 7, you can see very similar setup to the NASDAQ. In fact, it was negative here today, 0.37, very close to that 21 EMA. Same setup, still looking for that 21 EMA touch at 258.75. Probably going to see it tomorrow at some point. Even with a strong NVIDIA result, I still don't think that NVIDIA can hold up all of the Mag 7. There's just so much market cap here. NVIDIA is big, but you still got Apple, you still got Microsoft, Amazon, Google, which is having a terrible chart right now. So we'll see how it looks. Momentum fading, RSI breaking down. You can see that here, crossed below it today. So everything says this should continue to sell in my opinion, despite the potential for a strong NVIDIA result tomorrow. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple showing pretty strong results there, 0.37 to the upside, hanging out right at these highs from this consolidation. Still hasn't touched 230.28 yet. Momentum continues to fade. RSI continues to look kind of neutral in my opinion, but based on that price action, this looks like it could potentially push another $2 or 1% higher. So something to watch there on Apple, looks slightly bullish. And then looking at Microsoft, really no change to this thesis, very close to that 200 touch. So that's down at 409.96. You can see the structure of this, huge breakdown, consolidation upwards, almost looks like a bear flag, but not as clean. Looked like a pretty decent rally here, and now we're fading. For a moment there, we were below all the EMAs and SMAs, almost touching that 200. Did catch a slight bounce from there. 413.36 is the level. If we can close below that, I think we're going to go through that 200 and then push back to that 394 area. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA here, you got Tesla selling off again here today. We expected it. We're still looking for that 200 test. down at 203.23. So zone of support here. We'll see what happens once we get there. But pretty clear price action, big move down, tested this zone. We added the trend line, tested it again, and now we're selling off from there. So seems like we're headed right here. 203.80, trend line sitting just below it, around that 203 area. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Overall, everything looks a little bit weak. And then looking at NVIDIA, still hovering just off of its highs, still in the same consolidation we've been seeing. 124.96 all the way up to that 130.35 area. If it breaks out, probably headed to 140. If it breaks down, we're probably headed back towards these previous lows in the 144 EMA, which is all the way down around 100.73. Moving over to Amazon and Google, we got Amazon selling off 1.36%, 200 SMA sitting right there. Actually looks quite similar to Microsoft. We'll see if it bounces from that 200 zone at 171.93. Selling off just a smidgen after hours, momentum bearish, RSI bearish. And then looking at Google here, technically we closed below this trend line. So this is probably the best setup here for mega cap tech in terms of a potential trade. Clear move down, clear bear flag, almost tested, tried to rally up, and now we're fading here. We're right at that 21. If this breaks down from here, I think there's a lot of downside potential on Google. Still like this setup, still think it's going to look quite clean. Something to watch here. At a minimum, you would expect a retest of these previous lows around 5% lower in that 200 SMA. But if this is a true bear flag setup, there's a lot of room to the downside. You could start to look for that 143.82 area and that next highly traded zone in there. So definitely an interesting setup, definitely looks pretty bearish. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Staples continues to rocket higher, 0.24, another all-time high close, momentum bullish. Super overbought, but this is a rocket ship. Who knows where it's going to stall out, continues to look very good there. And then looking at discretionaries, gap down doji, tested the level, tested the trend. Momentum continues to fade. That's 2 steps in a row. RSI still above the SMA, but overall I would expect this to continue to roll over. Very similar setup to everything else at this point. Discretionaries fading. Moving over to oil and gas and financials. Oil and gas continuing to hover in this zone. Retested the 21, retested VWAP. If it's going to hold, it needs to do it now. If not, we're probably breaking back down to the 135 area and potentially even lower if this is a double top here. So something to watch. Zone of support needs to hold here. If it does, you could look for a 140 break up to that 145 area. So something to consider there. And then looking at financials, another record high, continues to rally, pretty aggressive, 0.5% higher, momentum bullish, RSI bullish, as financials continue to rally into this interest rate cut. Moving over to Breadth, 20 and 50-day Breadth. Both of these continue to roll to the downside 2 steps in a row towards that bearish momentum. We did get that one up step last time, but we'll see how it plays. RSI is still hovering, same setup as before, looking for that SMA test. But 2 down candles, interesting. Momentum continues to look quite bearish. Moving over to the dollar here just for a moment. We thought we might have caught a little bit of a bounce here on the Monday session, but we gave all of that back here today. Dollar continues to look like a dumpster fire, continues to sell off super aggressively. Trend support down at that 99.92 area. At this point, you have to assume we're going to get down there and test it. We'll see what happens after that. We did get below this low back here from December. So at this point, the low is the July of 23 low, which is right in here around that 99.6263 area. So we'll see what happens. Continues to look awful, continues to sell off. And in my opinion, this is what's allowing equities to stay somewhat buoyant despite the fact that charts look pretty awful. Moving over to bonds, JNK continues to hold support at 96.51. Momentum continues to fade a little bit, but this trend is very strong. So we'll see what happens if it consolidates and pushes higher, or if it does start to roll over a little bit, maybe test these previous highs. I still think this bull trend is going to hold, but short term it seems a little bit exhausted. And then TLT here continues to be in this kind of flat consolidation. Maybe this is where we're going to hang out until we officially get that first cut in September, and then we'll see what happens after that. Momentum did step to bearish, RSI stepped to bearish, so maybe we get a little bit more pullback. Trend support 96.86, next level 96.50, and then potentially some support in that 95.50 area. So looks like this might roll a little bit in my opinion. Moving over to the VIX, you can see we did get a down move here, 4.46. Still looking for support in that 4.7 area. We'll see how it plays. Still need it to hold this zone of support. If it breaks from here, we're probably headed back to the 1230 area. I don't think we're going to make it that far, so Probably going to hold here, and then we'll see that bigger up move that I'm still expecting off of the major rejection that I am expecting in equities. Moving over to my accounts, I made some money on the day once again, so you like to see it, up around $400 or $500, something in there. Russell continues to hover basically where it needs to for me to stay flat in that account. This covered call continues to cover those losses. 168 down on the shares, 160 profit on the calls. 260 is the call strike, so I still have another $2 of profit potential there. After hours, it's down about 50 cents, but no issues. $4.47 credit total on that, and I'm only at $81 profit so far, so plenty of room, plenty of protection, $3.73 left there. And then looking at the Qs, basically holding the same positions that I had going into yesterday. Still got the covered call at $4.74, still $13 credit on that. I'm only about $2.70 into the money at this point, so plenty of extrinsic value left. And then I have that long dated call, $320 profit on that, which means there's about $1,100 left on that potential over the next month. So still looking a little bit bearish. You can see my deltas are a little bit positive, which I probably should have put on some calls into the end of the session. Markets continue to look pretty awful. And after hours, we've fallen, wow, quite a lot. $1.70 after hours. So we gave back all of the gains for the day after hours, and markets continue to fall. So looking bearish going into tomorrow's session, and everything looks pretty awful as we head into that NVIDIA earnings. Let me know down in the comment section what you think NVIDIA earnings is going to bring to markets. Are they going to crush it? Are we going to regain the momentum? Or is this the final nail in the coffin and we're going to see that extended down move? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.